Hey everyone, Harry here to talk about Mark Meadows' motion the day after the indictment is brought in Fulton County to remove the case to federal court. All right, this is going to be a little along the lines of a dry explainer. I think people just want to understand what is this in legal terms. It's not so complicated, even if it's slightly dry. It's not so dry. It's pretty interesting. Look, we are a federalist system. We have state courts and federal courts. Normally, you go to federal court for claims of federal law, and you go to state court for claims of state law. A case, state of Georgia versus Donald Trump and 18 people, is the classic state law case for Georgia. So how can it be moved to federal court? Well, there's a provision that says if you sue in state court a federal office holder, and that office holder was acting under color of federal law for the stuff you're suing him for, that person can make a motion to move, it's called remove, the case to federal court. So just a second about what that would all be about. It, dates from well back when the states were stronger, the federal government was fledgling, and there was a worry, and this was reinforced also after the Civil War, that state authorities or just state citizens would hail a federal officer into court for the officers doing his or her job and proceed to dispense some home cooking justice. And basically, states would be invalidating the work of federal office holders. And, we're in a system where federal law is supreme, but they, bring it down home and say that this policy, or when you collected tax, Mr. Tax Collector, you trespassed. And so what removal permits is a federal office holder to say, I want to bring this to federal court, which was thought at the time that would be a fairer venue. It wouldn't be such a place of home cooking. It would be a federal judge and the like. Doesn't mean that the case goes away, although, and we remember this all came up with Trump and Stormy Daniels, and whether he was acting as president at the time. It might mean that the federal government steps in to defend. Okay, but that's the idea. I'm a federal office holder. You're suing me for things I took. If I slug you in the face, or I cheat you out of a contract, that's not me acting as a federal office holder. That stays in state court. But, if I come to collect taxes, or I enact a federal policy and you want to sue under state law, I can remove that to federal court. All right, so that's the idea. So now back to Mark Meadows. So his basic claim is all the stuff in the indictment, all the things you have me doing, this is just me acting as a chief of staff. I'm setting up phone calls for the president. I'm going down and representing the president's views. I'm triaging with Congress, etc. And that's what a chief of staff does. I'm doing my job. And when I'm doing my job, I don't have to stand trial in state court. If you're suing me for doing my job, I can remove it to federal court. We'll talk in a second about what that means if he does remove it. Now, there's a contrary view here, and we can contrast the whole Meadows situation with Trump. Trump is going to make the same argument. He's going to try to remove it. And he's done similar things in other cases, and you may recall the argument is all turned on, is he acting as a president? When he defames E. Jean Carroll, it came up here, is he actually, it's E. Jean Carroll and not Stormy Daniels I meant to refer to. Was he acting as a president, or is something like that outside the outer perimeter of what a president does? And when it's Trump, a lot of his conduct is outside the perimeter. So he's going to try to remove it. I don't think he'll have a very strong case. Meadows feels different to me, and it really has to do with how are we going to characterize his conduct. You can try to say, what's he doing? He's plotting to overthrow he's doing everything that Trump's doing. And that's not something that's chief of staffy and what, within the sort of job description of a chief of staff. So that doesn't fall within his normal official duties. So he can't move it to federal court. But then, the motion that was filed by his lawyer, George Terwilliger, characterized it in a sort of more bland task by task way. He's doing phone calls and conference calls, et cetera, and that's very chief of staff like. Now, an added little detail here: the circuit in Georgia, the 11th Circuit Court of Appeals, is pretty bullish they're pretty liberal about letting people remove cases. That's just what the case law is like there. So add that into the mix. One, there'll be a little rhetorical battle about how we characterize what Meadows is doing, and then two, there will the law will apply once characterized, and it leans in favor of removing. So I think that Meadows has a colorable claim for sure. Definitely not. I actually was asked this like on the spur of the moment yesterday on TV, and I gave my thoughts to the chagrin of the host. But on reflection, I think it's right, and more people seem to be accepting that view. He's got a real shot. Okay, who else does, by the way? Trump. He was an office holder at the time, but the gaggle of crackpot lawyers or whatever we said, they are not federal office holders. So that it's not going to come up with them. It has to be somebody who's a federal official. Okay, so Meadows will move. And by the way, an interesting detail, he moves on day one. That, to me, suggests he's not 100% on the Trump plan of delay the way in Mar-a-Lago, Walt Nauta and De Oliveira are, not getting lawyers and the like, because you have 30 days to move for removal. So it's an easy way to eat up 30 days on the clock. And we'll see whether Trump does his whole 30 days. But however, it's not the exact same motion, of course. It's different conduct. But it's going to be pretty significant how the court determines Meadows' motion as an indication of how they'll deal with Trump's motion when it does arise. So he does it quickly. All right, now let's say he wins. What's it mean? It's a little bit bizarre. We got a hybrid model where he's in federal court, and maybe most importantly, in Trump's mind and his, he's got a different jury pool. And that it's just when federal courts pick juries a little bit different. One has the voter rolls and one does driver's license. I don't even remember which is which, and but the span's a little bigger, and it just so happens that the pool of people who could be called to serve on juries in federal court are more include a greater percentage of Trump voters, are more likely to have MAGA types and the like. So that's really what the stakes are is the jury pool. It would still be state of Georgia versus Mark Meadows or versus Donald Trump and so it'd be state law. The state prosecutors would be doing it. But the jury would be, it'd be a federal judge. That might mean also federal procedures, which might mean significantly no cameras. So everyone is sort of, really focused on the prospect of actually having the Georgia case on video. And if Trump's able, if it's in federal court, though, unless the Chief Justice of the United States waves his wand and says you can televise it, it won't be televised. So the no televising and a much and a more pro-Trump, pro-MAGA jury pool are the differences here that would happen. Otherwise, though, you would apply state law. The poor federal judge would, have to inform or instruct the jury based on state law. The evidentiary objections, there are a few things that would be federal law because it goes by a procedure substance distinction that's getting more out there and legal and arcane than we need to do. But that's the story. So Meadows out of the box moves. He's got a colorable claim, I would say, and contrast with Trump. And if it happens, it's still the same cause of action, but he gets a better jury pool, and there won't and the trial won't be televised. So those are the stakes here. It's you guys are getting a very intense legal education. Removal's that kind of thing that is, you spend a couple weeks on in civil procedure in law school there. Now you know it, and as applied to one Mark Meadows, who is still to me the most. This will be a different talk, but there's a really interesting puzzle about him, what he's doing there versus what he's doing in the federal indictment. But that will be for another day. Talk to you later. Thanks for tuning in. If you enjoyed this video and other Talking Feds content, please take a second to like and subscribe. Talk to you later.